I'm here today with author Donna Weaver, who is also a U.S. Army specialist in the Signal Corps. She served in West Germany during the Cold War. So I was really grateful that she agreed to be one of my early readers for my upcoming historical, The Slow March of Light, which is set in West Germany and East Germany. First of all, though, I just want to welcome Donna. She is an author mostly of fiction, and we've known each other for several years, and we see each other at writers' conferences and different workshops. So I've gotten to know her as on the writer's side. So I was definitely fascinated and intrigued when I found out that she had such a wealth of background, and that she is a member of our military. So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit, Donna, and then we'll go through some of the questions I brought.
Okay. My family, we have a lot of military in my family. My dad was career Navy. And so I started school in Korea and
Wow.
lived in the Philippines. And being the odd duck, I ended up joining the Army instead of the Navy, even though my little sister joined the Navy and my brother went to the Naval Academy. And so, yeah, leave it up to me, right?
Right. So that was one of my questions is so you come from this military upbringing, and so obviously that's going to influence, what. So did you know from a young age that you wanted to join the military? Was it something you always wanted to do, or did you have other things you're thinking of too?
No, I think it was probably always there. In the background, they handle the GI Bill differently now than they did back then. But I had reached a point where I'd done a couple of years at BYU, and I really needed to have a way to fund the rest of my college education. And so I was definitely looking at the GI Bill as a way to do this. And I can remember calling my dad and asking him if I thought I was, jumping into it too fast. And he says, no, it sounds like you've really thought it through. And the interesting thing is that I chose the branch of the service that had the least amount of years. Am I bad? I ended up, it was the Navy wanted 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the Army and the Marines, which I also considered, only required 3. And at that particular time, they were talking about cutting off the GI Bill.
Wow, yeah.
And so there was kind of a pressure to make a decision. And so I went ahead and did it. I wouldn't trade any of the experiences that I've had. So.
Right. So was your dad or anyone in your family thinking you should be in the Navy? Or
no,
did you
I imagine you thought about it, but I'll tell you, when the Army-Navy game was playing,
right,
we're all in the room with the TV, and the whole barracks is there, and everybody's rooting for Army, and I'm going, go Navy,
right?
So, yeah,
that's pretty funny. So where did you do your basic training?
I did that at Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Okay.
And then we had something that was called COBET, which is Common Basic Electronics Training. And we did that one at Fort Jackson, but that was only for 2 weeks. And then we went to Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Okay. And then from there, what was the timeline like going from your different training camps to going to West Germany?
I finished my training. My MOS was teletype repair, which is actually kind of funny because my dad was surprised. He says that stuff was obsolete. This is back when computers were first starting to come out. Like there was a guy in our section in Germany who worked on the computers, but it was very obviously very different kind of stuff than what you'd see today.
Right.
But so I went in November, and by the time I got to Germany, I think it was like April. It seems like it was April I finished my training, and it was about June or so the following year when I was assigned to Germany. It seemed like everybody was either going to Korea or or Germany.
Wow.
And since I had lived in Korea for almost 3 years, I was actually hoping that they would send me to Germany. So I was excited about that opportunity to spend
Yeah.
some time in Europe for a change.
Did you know any German?
No, I had studied French and Spanish in high school, and so I took a class through the University of Maryland. They always have, for the military, they have, you take classes wherever bases that you're at, and then the University of Maryland acted as your suppository for classes wherever you took them.
Okay, yeah.
So I went ahead and I took a class in German, and of course by then the Spanish and the French were in there, and I was mixing things up like crazy. I'd go to grab a board. The thing that impressed me the most in Germany, well, actually there were two. One of them was how irritating Americans are, because they make the assumption that everybody should speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredibly rude to come to another country and expect people to speak your language.
Right.
The Germans were always so excited to have an American come into one of their little shops or whatever and say, you'd ask, sprechen Sie English, that kind of thing, and they would get so excited that somebody was actually trying to speak their language. So
Yeah. I think that's interesting. Like, so what years were you there?
75 to 77.
So did you feel like, I mean, that's quite a ways after World War II and after the wall has been up for a while, the Berlin Wall. Did you feel like there was animosity as far as Americans still occupying part of Germany?
Not where we were at. I was in Nuremberg, in that area outside of Nuremberg, and which is northern Bavaria. The people, like I said, were incredibly gracious and very kind in my interactions with them. The big deal was that the whole Soviet bloc was still a big issue. They would talk about that because I was with the Signal Corps, and so we did maintenance on electronic equipment, tanks, equipment, radios, that kind of stuff. And they told us if Russia launched troops, they could be here in 4 hours.
Wow.
And so that was kind of a little scary. I had no idea why they would come, but you just never know what motivates some people when they move.
Right. And you had earlier told me that you were the second woman sworn into your unit.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what that was kind of like how many women were in your unit, and
in ours there was just the two of us. Liz got in there that morning and I got in there that afternoon. And it was really funny because I was tall, like 5'9", and she was little, like 5'2". So we were a lot like Mutt and Jeff,
right.
the old characters and stuff. And we had the opportunity to, you had commented before about wondering if we'd had any interaction with East German troops. The closest we came to that was during Reforger. Reforger, I guess they don't do them anymore, but it used to be the European war games.
Okay.
And so they would bring the troops were there, from all the countries, all over Europe, including the East, the ones from the Eastern Bloc. And at that particular time, you just didn't see that many women in fatigues.
Yeah.
And as we were driving to our location for Reforger, people would that whole experience where somebody drops their jaw.
Yeah.
Stands there staring at you with their mouth open. Yeah, we saw a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but of course it freaked our section chief out because his biggest concern was our safety.
Right.
So, but he said, if they're going to send me women, I guess I'm going to have to put them to work. So it really changed how the guys were used to doing things, because they had a big old long trailer that had all the what do you call it, like a table where
Mm-hmm.
they'd have their equipment so that they could, and they would move that stuff aside, put their sleeping bags on it, and that's where they would sleep at night. Well, so he brought a deuce and a half, that's a 2.5 ton truck, for us, and we had to sleep in that. But yeah, but he was paranoid. Anytime we went anywhere away from our section,
Mm-hmm.
he had an armed guard with us.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So, were any of the other military presence? Did they have women in there as well, or did you, or was it just
They
Americans?
did, they did. There was one gal who was in. I think there were 17 women in our barracks there in Germany, and one of the gals. Most of them were more traditional roles, administrative, clerks, that kind of thing. One of them was a mechanic.
Wow, that's neat.
So that was a lot of fun because she had a lot of spunk too.
So, what was kind of like your typical day like while you're serving in West Germany?
Well, you get up, you wake up in the morning and you have to get dressed and ready, you have to get in your uniform, and then everybody, gosh, it's been so long I can't even remember some of the terms anymore. But they had you come out and muster for roll call, and so they make any announcements, that kind of stuff, and then you just go to your shop to do your work. And we typically worked an 8 to 5 day with a break for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the time for us, it was 8 to 5. I did get married while I was there,
Hmm.
and I had a baby.
Wow.
And it was just at the time, it used to be that women, if they got pregnant, that was it, you were automatically out.
Right.
And they had started to let them stay. And I didn't want to, but I wanted to get a European separation so they didn't have to fly to the States and then fly back to Germany with my husband. So we were working really hard to get this European separation. The timing could not have been better for me because they had our entire unit went out on maneuvers.
Hmm.
And I would have had to turn my brand new baby, my newborn baby, over to somebody else. And like my mom died when I was 14. So it's not like I'm going to send my kid back to the States, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it created some challenges, I know.
So, was your husband in the Army too? Did you meet over there, or did you already know him from the States?
Uh, he was my first husband.
Okay.
He died. But yeah, he was in the Army. He was in my unit. And in fact, the father-in-law who's living with us is his dad.
Oh,
All
wow.
the rest of his family is gone. So yeah,
Wow.
my current husband is Air Force, was Air Force.
So you have Navy, Air Force, Army, all in your family.
Oh, and my nephew's the Marines. My father-in-law was the Coast Guard. Oh yeah, we got it all. We
Yeah, that's
got it all.
amazing. So, so did you ever go to any of the East German cities, even though you're stationed?
We didn't at that particular
Okay.
time. There was no going. I mean, if you had a special reason to go to Berlin, that was the only time you would cross East
Yeah,
German
yeah,
land. So
yeah. And then when you were on leave, were you able to go visit other countries and travel around a little bit?
we did. That one of the things they did that was really quite nice was they made arrangements to have very inexpensive like lodging at
Mm-hmm.
hotels and stuff. So like Berchtesgaden, that was Hitler's
Mm-hmm.
favorite like place, Berchtesgaden. They talk about isn't it the Eagle
I think so. Yeah.
Tower? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's in Berchtesgaden. Okay. And so yeah, we went skiing. Munich. We were able to go. There was a place there that wasn't too far from there where you were able to go skiing. So that was the fun thing, taking the train to ride there. Oh, it's interesting the cultural differences. They
Mm-hmm.
have them more now with the handle doorknobs, but when we were in Germany, in the U.S., most of your doorknobs were the round
For the
things.
round,
You
yeah.
didn't see the handles. In Germany, they were all the handles.
Huh.
And so everybody would always joke, yeah, when I go back to the land of the round doorknob. And that was just because of the differences. It's like in Germany, they don't have closets because they get taxed by room. And so all your closets are big, like armoires. They call
Mhm.
them trunks. And that's where you hang up your clothes and store your stuff there. So,
Huh. Interesting. So, did you end up learning German pretty well, or did you have to use it a lot?
no, because I worked on a base, we
Hmm.
did we did rent an apartment on the economy, and so we were able to talk just a little bit with our neighbors. They were very friendly, but our muddled German wasn't great, and their muddled English wasn't great, and so
Right.
we managed to communicate, but it was interesting.
Yeah. So, are there like foods or traditions that maybe you still do today because of Germany?
Um, well, it's one of those things. They have some of the best, like little Christmas decorations.
Hmm.
The Christkindlmarkt, they have one of the most famous ones is in Nuremberg. And so it was fun to be able to go there. And so those are the Christmas decorations that I have. I have a nutcracker that I got there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you learn a lot about the culture. One of the things they did for that first week that we were there, they train you a little bit because there is a cultural shock. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not, when you go from a Western, you know, country that's very similar to ours in many ways, it's not as big a shock as it is if you were to go to a third world country where there's abject poverty and that kinds of things. And like the food is very, very different. I mean, the food's different in Germany, but it was. They took us around the cities. They taught us some basic words.
Hmm.
It's like, did you know that you have a vocabulary of about 1,000 words in German?
Hmm.
You just have to be
Yeah.
creative.
Right.
Because like house, Haus, means house, like it
Yeah.
does here. Auto for automobile, right?
Right.
Beer, which all the GIs really liked a lot. Uh, but yeah, but it was interesting, and so we had to go out and order. I thought it was a very good way to kind of ease us into the culture and make it so that you felt like you could go out into the economy
Yeah.
and not be terrified.
So, are there certain foods that you really loved?
Oh yes, the German ice cream is horrible. I don't know if they've improved, but that was kind of one of the big jokes is that if you made friends with the Germans, they always wanted to trade off for ice cream and American cigarettes, American ice cream and American cigarettes. Uh, but um, but yeah, like the it was crazy because they had McDonald's
Huh.
and you could go in there and it's like, why would you pay the same amount to eat at a McDonald's when you could go to a nice German restaurant and eat their food? It was wonderful food.
Yeah.
So I love the Wiener Schnitzel. That was just, but then they had all kinds of things. It was interesting to see their take on pizza
Hmm.
because it wasn't like what we had, but it wasn't. But people who had been to Italy said it wasn't like the Italians had.
Huh. Yeah, I
So
remember when I lived in Israel as a teenager, is their pizza was kosher. So you don't have any pepperoni or sausage, just you have like olives or onions or corn on your pizza. And it was good. You ate it
yeah,
and it was good
yeah.
and you enjoyed it.
They always had little shops. One of the best things I ever had was something that they called Italian ice
Oh yeah.
with the fruit and stuff. Some people would say, "Oh yeah, gelato." No, 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 no. This is not
Yeah.
like that. It's much lighter, fruitier. It was the best stuff I'd ever tasted. They give you a little cup and they put these little tiny scoops in it of all these different flavors.
Oh nice. Yeah. So did you ever go back after your service there?
No, no, but my oldest son was born there, and so we've talked about someday it would be fun if we could take like a river cruise or something
Hmm.
and make sure because they have one that stops in Nuremberg. That
Oh
would be really cool for
yeah.
him to be able to do that. One of my biggest challenge was when he was getting ready to be called on his mission. was we were worried because in Germany the draft is mandatory and
Oh,
nobody goes.
right.
And because he had been born there, they had an agreement with the Germans that he would have dual citizenship.
Hmm.
And my biggest worry would, what if they sent him there on a mission to go to Germany, and then they decided, no, you need to go and be in the military.
Right.
Or they sent him to Russia instead, because that's so much better.
All right. Wow. Yeah. You just never know, huh?
No, you sure don't. Sure don't.
Um, so just so I'm kind of done with all my little drilling questions here, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about when you started writing novels and how you decided to become a writer in that format.
Well, I actually wrote my first book because I had been thinking about working on my personal history. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could learn a little bit about writing so that I do not create a cure for insomnia for my
Mm-hmm.
descendants? And so then I had heard about NaNoWriMo,
Mm-hmm.
but I was too late for it to do anything. So that following January is in 2010. I did it just to see if I could write a full-length novel. Yeah, I did it. 30 days, I
Nice.
did 8,000 words. And then I commenced to really learn about writing.
Yeah.
And I think by the time I did sell that one to a publisher, and by the time the book actually came out, it was 20 major rewrites
Yeah.
because it was my learning project.
Right. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, how many books do you have out now? Do you even know?
I think I've got 22 or 23
Wow.
out. So, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get back to my personal history. I've been having too much with the fun with the fiction.
You
So,
take a detour, huh?
well, it's interesting because I went in 75, and so I was, I was thinking about the possibility of. They say that a book is historical if it is at least 50 years old.
Right.
Oh, that's 1971.
Right.
So I just have to wait a few years, and I can write a historical novel based
About
on
your.
my experiences and basic training and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yep. True. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today, Donna. I really appreciate you
I
talking.
really enjoyed your book. I just want to say it
Okay.
was so fun to read this man's experiences and all the abuses that he put up with, and what a great attitude he had. It was fabulous. It was. I'm so glad that you wrote his story.
Yeah, it's definitely very humbling to write about his story, and I've now met him a couple times, and he's still the same way. He's just a very humble man, very grateful man, just very very sweet. And in fact, when we did an interview with him up, he's 86 now. He lives in Idaho Falls, and we did an interview with him, and he's very very soft spoken. And his wife kept saying, "Speak up, Bob. Talk louder, Bob." And he just kind of gave this little smile, and he said, "I'm scared." He
Oh,
said, "You shouldn't be scared about this. You've been through a lot, a lot of things in life." And
yeah.
but he just is definitely a sweetheart. So it was a privilege and honor to write his story and to learn more about him, and is very intimidating as well.
Yeah, I'll bet. Wanting to make sure you do him justice.
Right, especially when he was going to read the book.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, got through that part, luckily.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day, and
Okay, you too.
good luck in all your projects. So thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.